Grade 12s, my name is Mrs. Bishop and I'm from the BCM district in the Eastern Cape. I'm a subject advisor for life sciences. Welcome to the ECDOE broadcast studio. Today's lesson is on the structure and overview of life sciences paper 1. I will be covering this topic for your full understanding. So let's get into today's lesson. Life sciences paper 1. If we look at the topic and weightings, there are 5 topics that are included in Life Sciences Paper 1. Let's get on with today's lesson then, and let's look at Paper 1. Right, first of all, let's look at the overview of the topics and the weightings. Right, the first topic is responding to the environment on humans, which includes the nervous system and the ear, and is the highest weighted topic in our paper. Human reproduction carries the second most marks, whereas endocrine and homeostasis carries 34 marks. Then we have responding to the environment in plants, which includes plant hormones, which is 13 marks, and reproduction in vertebrates, which is only 8 marks. Now, let's look at the layout of the paper, because how you write the paper is just as important as what you are writing. Firstly, a neat handwriting. Make sure that your writing is clear for the marker to be able to read the words. Write the section and question number at the top of each page. For example, section A, question 1. Start each question at the top of a new page. Once you've finished question 1, start on a new page with question 2. Don't follow on under question 1. Also, leave a line between each question. So for instance, 211, leave a line, then write 212. Leave a line and then write 213. We find that many candidates are squashing their work together, and it becomes very difficult to see where one question is finishing and another question is starting. Then, answering the paper. Read questions thoroughly with understanding and follow instructions. Even the instructions that are above the diagram or the graph. Many learners are not reading it, and therefore they interpret the diagram or graph incorrectly. Take note of the mark allocation for each question. If 4 marks are asked for, then make sure that you have 4 points that can be marked in your answer. In question 1.1, make sure that you only write 1 letter per answer. This is the multiple choice. If you write 2 letters, it will be marked wrong straight away, even if the first letter is correct. If the question asks you for 2 reasons, then only write 2 reasons. Okay? And the reason for this is that markers will only mark the first 2 reasons because only 2 were asked for. Anything further will not be marked. Okay? And so you are wasting your time by writing extra stuff. So write down the 2 most correct reasons first. Okay? And then don't write anything further because it won't be marked. Read carefully. When a letter and a name is asked for, make sure that you write down both, because you're getting a mark for both the letter and the name. We find that too many learners are just writing the name or just writing the letter, and then they lose a mark and they knew the question. Spelling is a big problem, and it's causing people to lose marks. All right? So firstly, don't abbreviate in the terminology. Secondly, know your words. When you're studying, write down the words so that you get the correct spelling. Terms like axon and auxin are very often confused, and an axon is totally different to a auxin. Chorion and choroid are another 2 words that are mixed up, as well as glucagon and glycogen. Very often people are writing glycagon, okay, which is a mixture of those 2 words, and then you get it wrong straight away. Blastocyte and blastocyst, right? Know which is which, all right? Then, always write the full term. Learners are writing medulla instead of medulla oblongata. There are many different medullas in the body, and so we need to know the part of the brain we're talking about is the medulla oblongata. Semicircular instead of semicircular canals. Next, answer the specific question. Okay? Questions have an action verb. That is the verb at the beginning of the question, and that tells me what I'm expecting from your answer. So for instance, if you're asked to describe something, give a detailed account including all the relevant information. When you explain, write the statement and elaborate with giving reasons, all right, in a cause and effect manner. Now let's look at the specific topics. We're going to run through very quickly some common mistakes that learners are making. But what's important before we start this is that for each topic, I've included the exam guidelines into this presentation because it's important that when we study with the exam guidelines because it's telling us what we need to study. Sometimes we are studying work we don't need to. Sometimes we are not studying work that is in the guidelines, and so we're understudying. Right, so let's look at our first chapter in vertebrate reproduction. Common mistakes here is in internal fertilization. Learners refer to the embryos of the fetus, but internal fertilization is about the gametes meeting. So internal fertilization protects the gametes from predators, okay? And it brings the sperm and the eggs into closer contact. It does not help the embryos or the fetus at all. Altricial development, okay, is when the young are born underdeveloped. They are not blind. Their eyes are closed, but they can still see. If you write that they are blind, you're going to get it wrong because blind is another disorder in life sciences. Also, birds that have altricial development have very little yolk. That means they don't stay in the egg for long because there's not enough food or nutrition inside the egg, and that's why they're born at an early stage. They need parental care, but so do precocial animals. So we need to state that the parental care needed by altricial animals is to provide food and for protection, okay, not just parental care. Reproduction in humans. In this section, we need to use diagrams. We're finding that learners can't identify parts of the reproductive system as well as parts of the menstrual cycle. So we need to study both these sections, using diagrams. Also, the accessory glands. We don't need to know their functions separately, right? We have the three functions of the accessory glands as laid out in the diagnostic report. So if I ask you about the prostate, then you can give any of these functions as a function of the prostate. If I ask you a function of the seminal vesicles, the same applies. I can give any of these functions for the seminal vesicles. You don't need them separate. Right, then also follow your guidelines. Where there's explanations given in the guidelines, learn those explanations. There's no need to go and learn further, more detailed explanation. Spermatogenesis and oogenesis are given in your exam guidelines. So learn these explanations from your exam guidelines. Menstrual cycle, once again, let's use diagrams when we are studying. Okay, because we need to identify the parts of the menstrual cycle. We need to, for instance, be able to interpret a graph of the menstrual cycle. Then another problem that we picked up is that learners don't know the difference between when I give a function of progesterone or why I'm explaining why progesterone increases. Okay, so in last year's November paper, the a question was, why does progesterone increase after day 20 in a pregnant female? And this is because the corpus luteum continues to produce progesterone. And so progesterone continues to increase. However, learners are writing that the function of progesterone is to thicken the endometrium. This is not why it's increasing. It's increasing because the corpus luteum is producing it. Another problem with not following your guidelines is you tend to neglect certain topics. For instance, the structure and development of the fetus in the the structure of the developing fetus in the uterus using a diagram, and the roles of progesterone and estrogen in maintaining pregnancy. Okay? These are not being learned. Refer to your East Cape 2025 question paper. All right, look at the marking guidelines. It gives you a nice explanation of the role of estrogen and progesterone in maintaining pregnancy. Abbreviations, again, don't abbreviate words when there is no official abbreviation. CNS, PNS for central nervous system and peripheral nervous system are not acceptable, okay, because they're not official abbreviations. Name specific parts of the brain. When I'm talking about hearing, I'm talking about the cerebrum. When I'm speaking about balance and coordination, I'm speaking about the cerebellum is responsible. Don't just use a generic term, the brain. Then, when I'm speaking about functions of the cerebellum, I don't say that the cerebellum's function is controlling balance. The cerebellum coordinates voluntary muscle movement. And by coordinating voluntary muscle movement, it maintains balance. So its function is coordinating the muscle movement in your body. The location of the corpus luteum, many learners do not know this. It's between the two hemispheres of your cerebrum, not your brain, okay? Because your brain has many other parts. It's found in the cerebrum. Then the reflex arc, the reflex action, and the synapse. You need to know the definitions and understand the definitions and the difference between these terms. A reflex action is a rapid, involuntary response to a stimulus that prevents further injury. Right? Don't confuse it with the reflex arc, which is the pathway of a reflex action. Also, when we talk about a reflex action, a reflex arc rather, we need to be able to apply it to specific examples. So if I'm applying it to when I put my hand on a hot stove, I immediately pull my hand away, right? When I explain that reflex action, I need to explain what receptors are picking up the stimulus. My skin receptors are picking up the stimulus. Which effector is bringing about the response? My muscle in my arms are contracting to bring about the response. So be specific in your answering. Then a synapse, that microscopic gap between your neurons. Okay? Its function is to ensure that the impulse travels in one direction. So it can't turn around and go the wrong way. Then the message won't get to where it's needed. Right? It ensures it travels in one direction. Another problem we picked up last year is that you don't know the difference between a motor and a sensory neuron. Refer to the diagnostic report for a full explanation, as in this table, of the differences between a motor and a sensory neuron. The problem we picked up in last year's examination is that many learners do not know the difference between a motor neuron and a sensory neuron. So in this diagram, here's my motor neuron and there's my sensory neuron. You must be able to identify them from a diagram, okay, as well as draw a diagram of a motor and sensory neuron. And then you need to know the characteristics of a motor neuron and sensory neuron. You can find this table in the diagnostic report, right? Or you can just pause and copy it down now. Then also, all right, we have to learn the diseases of the nervous system. Now, multiple sclerosis is one of those diseases. And in multiple sclerosis, the myelin sheath breaks down. And many learners know this answer. So you know that the myelin sheath is what's breaking down for multiple sclerosis. But you cannot explain what the effect is. When the myelin sheath breaks down, it means that the impulses will be much slower along the axon. Not that there will be no impulses. The impulses will still travel, but they travel so slowly that they can't actually bring about a response because the speed is so slow. Then, when we are studying the eye, please use diagrams. That goes for the ear as well. We have to study with diagrams. Mind the Gap has beautiful diagrams that you can use. You can download it, or your teacher might have one for you at school, right? Annotate these diagrams. Put all the labels around. Write the functions as you are studying so that you know where each part is on the diagram. Something to watch out for is when explaining a cataract. A cataract, remember, is the clouding of the lens. Light can still enter the eye, but the light cannot go through the lens. So don't say light cannot enter the eye, because it does. It just cannot move through the lens to land on the retina at the back of the eye. Right there, the ear again. Once again, use your diagrams. Then another thing to watch out for in answering the ear is that we use the correct terminology for sound waves, vibrations, and pressure waves. Remember, in the outer ear, sound travels as sound waves. In the middle ear, it travels as vibrations through the bones, the ossicles. And when it gets to the inner ear, it travels as pressure waves through the fluid in the inner ear. So you must use the correct term in the correct place. Otherwise, if you say sound waves in the inner ear, you are going to get it wrong. Next topic is the endocrine system. Okay, here we make lots of mistakes. Okay, firstly, let's look at the guidelines. You have to know the difference between an endocrine and an exocrine gland. This has been asked so many times in exams, so make sure you understand the differences between the two, right? As well as knowing the definition for a hormone, right? This one is quite poorly answered. There's your definition. An organic chemical secreted in small amounts by the endocrine glands into the bloodstream. Remember, endocrine glands put it into the bloodstream. You must know the glands and where they are found and their functions. Okay, so the best way to do this is an annotated diagram again. You see how important diagrams are. You'll notice that they're in every question in the life science paper. So you need to study with diagrams. Your book should have diagrams in it, not only words. Okay, so make yourself a lovely annotated diagram, all right, giving the label and the functions of each hormone. Then a definition to note is homeostasis. Okay, some learners are struggling to define what is homeostasis, and it's given to you in the exam guidelines. Homeostasis is the process of maintaining a constant internal environment within narrow limits despite changes that take place internally and externally. In your exam guidelines stated. So if you're given definition in your exam, you state it in exactly the same way. Okay. Then we need to learn the negative feedback mechanisms. Okay, how homeostasis takes place. Right. We need to look at thyroxine levels, blood glucose levels, carbon dioxide levels in the blood, water balance or osmoregulation, and salt. Right. Common mistakes made here is that when we talk about these hormones in the negative feedback mechanisms, right, we say that the hormones are start and stopping, okay? Hormones don't start and stop. They are either produced in larger quantities or fewer quantities. So we need to say more of the hormone is produced or less of the hormone is produced. For instance, the pituitary gland is stimulated to produce more ADH, or your thyroid gland is stimulated to produce less thyroxine. Okay, we need to use the words more or less when describing it. And a general rule that you can apply when learning these negative feedback mechanisms is that low concentration of a hormone causes more, Another concept that is often stated incorrectly is the function of insulin. Insulin does not convert glucose to glycogen. It stimulates the conversion of glucose to glycogen. Insulin actually helps the glucose to move through the cell membrane into the cell, where it is then converted from glucose into glycogen and stored. So we need to be careful when we are stating the function of insulin, that it stimulates the conversion. Also, thyroxine controls metabolism. And therefore, an undersecretion of thyroxine would mean that the metabolic rate would be low, which would mean that there would not be much glucose, used, and more of the glucose will be stored as fat. And that's why it increases your body mass. It's not correct to say that less fat will be broken down, as this won't increase your body mass. Okay, it will keep your body mass the same. And again, don't confuse glucagon and glycogen. We also need to know the disorders, the goiter, as well as diabetes mellitus. Make sure that you have a good understanding, as these two diseases are often used in the more investigative type question, and it's important that you understand these diseases fully. Another thing that is neglected in studying is thermoregulation. All right. Thermoregulation is the control of the body temperature. Okay. And when we write thermoregulation, it's important that we explain it properly, because thermoregulation takes place in the skin. All right. It doesn't take place all over the body. All right. So when we are explaining thermoregulation, we will say the hypothalamus is stimulated. It stimulates the blood vessels in the skin to dilate, not blood vessels in other parts of the body. It's important to state that it's in the skin. More blood flows to the skin, right? More heat is lost through radiation. More blood flows to sweat glands, more sweat is then produced, and more heat is lost through evaporation and sweat. Notice these words here, more, 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 more. It's important to state that. And if we are explaining the opposite, then we are going to say less, less, less. Okay, it's important to include those words, otherwise you will lose the marks. Plant hormones. These poor plant hormones are terribly neglected. Okay, we underlearn them because we think it's just 13 marks, but these can actually be a very easy 13 marks. So the first thing you need to know about plant hormone is their functions. And here I've listed the basic functions of your plant hormones, right? Your auxins, that's causing cell division and cell elongation. Apical dominance, tropisms, phototropism and geotropism, development of fruit, adventitious roots, and controlling leaf fall. Gibberellins, all right, that's causing stem elongation, stimulating seed germination, promoting flowering, and stimulating root growth. And abscisic acids, okay, which causes the leaves to fall. It causes seed dormancy. So learn those definitions well. Okay? Then don't confuse auxin and axon. Get the correct spelling. Here are some things that people get incorrect in their exams. Firstly, what is the difference between geotropism and phototropism? Now we know how to explain it, but when we get an investigation, we often mix it up, right? If there's unilateral light, it's going to cause phototropism. If the light is equal or the plants are in the dark, light does not affect it, so there is no phototropism. It will be geotropism. Know what agar jelly is and what agar jelly is used for, all right, and why we put hormones in the agar jelly. Hormones are also used as weed killer, and it's auxins that are used as a weed killer. They kill the broad-leafed weeds by making them grow very quickly. They use up all their resources and then they die. Defense mechanisms, very easy. Don't forget to learn it. It's chemicals and thorns. And why do we need them? To prevent animals eating the plants. Okay, that is why plants need them. Right, and so we've gone through a lot in paper 1. I've given you a lot of hints of things that people are doing wrong, mistakes that learners are making. So you don't need to go make these mistakes again, all right? You can get these tiny marks that add up to a big percentage of your paper. Right, so I hope that you have listened well, you've taken notes. Thank you for staying with us and paying attention. And good luck for your exams. We've come to the end of today's lesson. You can leave your questions on the comments. Don't forget to leave your name of your school so we can give you a shout out. Please share, recommend, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching and see you at our next lesson. Bye-bye.